Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers will reportedly be given new guidance that will lead to fewer arrests and deportations. According to the Washington Post, the policy change would mean ICE agents no longer seek deportations for immigrants convicted of drunk driving and assault. It also weakens ICE's ability to arrest wanted immigrants at correctional facilities. For more, let's bring in CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez. So, Camilo, the Washington Post report cites a memo that was issued by the former Department of Homeland Security Secretary David Pekoski on January 20th. What does the memo instruct ICE agents to actually do?
Good morning, Vlad. This memo marks a significant shift in immigration enforcement policy here in the U.S. The memo instructs ICE agents to prioritize the arrest of 3 different groups of immigrants. The first one is those immigrants who pose a national security risk. The second group is immigrants who are recently apprehended along U.S. borders, so recent border crossers. And the third and final group are immigrants who are determined by ICE to pose a public safety risk because of certain crimes that they have committed, and also because they've been recently released from federal or state prisons. We also received a statement from ICE today, Vlad, that said that ICE agents now have to seek approval from leadership before arresting somebody outside of these parameters and in communities outside of federal and state jails. So now they have to seek approval before conducting at-large arrests in communities that fall outside the scope of these new parameters. And we also know that ICE will be issuing more permanent guidance within 100 days to supersede these interim arrest priorities. So these are very significant changes to the way that ICE operates here in the U.S., and it will severely limit ICE arrests during the pandemic, which have been already scaled back because of the risk posed by the coronavirus.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. How do these new policies compare to those governing immigration and arrests and deportations during the Trump administration?
Well, Anne-Marie, it's a significant departure from the Trump administration's enforcement priorities. Soon after taking office, Mr. Trump withdrew and scrapped the Obama-era limits placed on ICE. And he said that pretty much every undocumented immigrant in the U.S. without legal status was subject to arrest and deportation. There were a few exceptions, like recipients of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program who have deportation relief, but pretty much everyone else who lacked legal status was subject to arrest. Mr. Trump also expanded the use of detention when it comes to asylum seekers, those seeking asylum along U.S. borders. It was used as a form of deterrence. The administration believed that if you detained these asylum seekers for a prolonged period of time for the duration of their cases, that would send a message to would-be migrants and would-be asylum seekers that they should expect to be detained for the duration of their cases if they come here to the U.S. The new Biden administration, Vlad and Anne-Marie, has promised to explore alternatives to detention, like ankle monitors and case management programs that allow immigrants to be connected with lawyers and community advocates to ensure that they show up for their court hearings. So we can also expect, in addition to these limits on ICE arrests, expect a reduction in the ICE detainee population.
So, Camilo, among the DHS changes which took effect on the 1st was the attempt by the Biden administration to place a 100-day halt on certain removals. But a judge shut down the policy with a temporary injunction. So could this change? Yeah, the injunction, the temporary restraining order actually is temporary. It is in place for a few days, and it is set to expire this month. Unless the judge in Texas extends it for another 14 days, which seems likely according to what he has said already. But I think this is something that the Biden administration can expect, more lawsuits from conservative states like Texas and Arizona and others who have already sued over this deportation moratorium, which would have been unprecedented for ICE. It was only instituted for 5 days before it was blocked by this federal
judge in Texas, and it would have shielded most immigrants facing deportation from here in the U.S. But now, because of this court order, immigrants subject to deportation are being deported, and this obviously has concerned many advocates because, as you know, one of Mr. Biden's main campaign pledges on immigration was to pause deportations for his first 100 days, but obviously he cannot do that now because of this court case in Texas.
You reported on Friday that the Biden administration is planning to increase the refugee cap for the current fiscal year. By how much are they planning to raise the refugee ceiling?
Well, for context, Anne-Marie, the Trump administration, when it came in, it dramatically slashed refugee admissions into the U.S. Before leaving office, Mr. Obama, President Obama, that is, set a 110,000 cap. Mr. Trump continuously slashed that and actually allocated only 15,000 spots last year. Now, the new Biden administration is proposing to Congress to raise that 15,000 person cap to more than 60,000 spots for this current fiscal year. There are 8 months left, but only 1,500 refugees have been actually admitted during this fiscal year, which started last October. So that is a pretty small figure, and the Biden administration is looking to ramp up refugee admissions for the current fiscal year. And Mr. Biden has also already promised to institute a 125,000 cap during the next fiscal year, which starts in October, fiscal year 2022. And obviously that is even higher than the highest cap instituted by President Obama. So the Biden administration is looking to admit more refugees because they argue that there are millions of people displaced by war, violence, and armed conflict around the world, especially in Africa and Southeast Asia and other regions of the world. You have climate change refugees in Central America. That's something that the new administration is also looking at. So they want to, ramp up these refugee admissions. And they also know that to do so, they have to rebuild the resettlement infrastructure here in the U.S., which was decimated over the past 4 years because a lot of these resettlement agencies had to close down offices and lay off staff because they were not helping many refugees during the last administration.
Camilo, thank you so much.